Coming up next, the Bookening reads Invisible Man. Ooh. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Bookening. This is, Brendan was just commenting before we hit record, we are almost certainly getting canceled in the discussion of this book.
Yeah. Pretty sure we're not allowed to talk about this book.
Yeah, I don't know why we would. Although, interestingly, one of the things that I want to bring up later is that Ralph Ellison has this famous quote where he says he read the Victorian novelists, he read the Russians, he read all the great works of literature, and he said, I was always the hero. And that's what great literature does, is it allows you to be empathetic with other races and with other cultures. He saw himself as Pierre when he read War and Peace. The race thing didn't enter into it, which was fascinating to me because I think Ralph Ellison would get canceled for saying that. Or if I try to enter into this book in the same way and find what's universal about his experiences and about the experiences he's right about, I'm afraid that I might get canceled for doing that. So I don't know, maybe we can all just get canceled together.
Well, I think it's going to happen. We're going to get canceled for this, but I think you're right that is what Ellison's doing. He doesn't have the easy answers, and he's criticizing a lot of the things that would get you canceled for criticizing them today.
Yeah, it's true.
He's not overly friendly to the Marxist option.
He is not. Not overly friendly to the militant, what would become the kind of Malcolm X style Black Panther type thing either.
It's really difficult to say what his answer is. I'm not sure that he has one really, right?
Self-actualization, maybe, but not the Booker T. Washington style self-actualization. I don't know.
It has to do with responsibility, for sure. And so that can get rid of pretty much all the recent.
Right.
Man, we're going to get canceled.
It's okay. It's okay. Let's just embrace cancellation. This will be a great last novel to talk about because I love this book. This is one of my favorite books we've read, I think.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
It's just really good. Really special book. But we're kind of vamping for time here while we wait for Jake. So
isn't it sad that even that statement you almost are afraid can get you canceled?
What, this is my favorite book?
Just for two white men saying that this is one of their favorite books.
Yeah. How could I understand this book? How could I enter into his plight? Am I even allowed to read this book? Am I, in fact, somehow disempowering him or culturally appropriating from him if I feel his feelings?
Like, you are.
Can I even engage in Black art?
I think I've decided you're getting canceled. So what I'm going to say, Nathan, is you are, Nathan. You are appropriating everything, and you're an awful human being. And I respect this novel, but I can't enter into it fully because I don't have the existential standpoint from which to do that. Because Brennan? I am a bag of what?
Bones?
Yeah, a bag of bones. I'm a bag of bones.
You're a bag of bones. People may not have ever seen us. They don't know that we're not Black.
That might be the funniest thing we've ever said on this podcast.
You think it's pretty clear we're not Black?
Probably.
Yeah, I don't think we're not the blackest people around. No. It's possible we're just kind of middle class white guys.
Possible.
In point of fact,
we could be the Brotherhood.
We could be the Brotherhood. That's true.
Jake does have that glass eye.
Yeah, Jake has that glass eye, and his real name is actually Jack Menzel.
Yeah, he creepily will use it as like a whiskey stone. He'll put it in the freezer, and hey, there he is.
Hey, there he is, the man himself. We were just talking about your glass eye.
Yeah.
How your real name's Jack.
Mm-hmm.
And you like to pop it out to kind of intimidate people during the Brotherhood meetings.
Yeah.
What we were talking about is how we're definitely getting canceled. And then I made the point that people listening to this podcast who've never seen our faces don't actually know we're not Black.
And I laughed heartily at that.
You don't know that, but that we have a full right to engage with this text in any which way that we choose.
Who knows? But on some lower frequency, we might speak for you.
Yeah, the podcast, the lower frequency of Apple Podcasts or whatever it is that people are using to listen to this fine program.
Mm-hmm.
Which I should now introduce. It's the Bookening with me, your humble and obedient host, Nathan Aaron Alberson. We got Brandon Jerome
Close.
Menzel over there.
Yep.
And
Jake adopted me.
Yep, that is true. People should probably know that Jake adopted you. And
Hey, Dad.
One day I may feel that you've earned the right to be called son, but today is not that day.
Oh, man.
Wow.
It really hurts.
A reverse Aragorn kind of thing here. One day something good might happen. Well, Brandon, in point of fact, you haven't earned the right to be called Jake's son. What have you ever done for Jake?
Nothing.
Yeah, well, my point exactly. Not really even sure why he adopted you, especially considering you're basically his age.
Yeah, it is weird. But hey, there's some sort of tax thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
You can never get too much of that Joe Biden money.
Child tax credit, man.
Yeah.
$3,000 a kid. Need that money.
Yeah. You're
Oh,
welcome, Jake.
yeah. I like Joe Biden's money. Hey, so that's Brandon Scott Chastain. That's his name.
Yeah.
I knew it all along. And Brandon, why don't you introduce the most important person who has the most insightful things to say about race in America?
His name is Pastor Jacob.
I don't have a name.
Menzel. He has no name. He is the Invisible Man. In fact, we can't even see him. Just a floating pair
Where
of
am I?
glasses right there. Yeah.
Yep.
You're a phantasm. What is it? An ectoplasm? What does he say there at the beginning? He's got
Even a
something
voice
awesome.
without a body has something to say
Yeah,
and a part to play.
that's right. Spitting that out like jazz, man.
Is that a reference to something?
Which thing? What
I
I
think
just
it's
said?
Jazz
No,
thing?
what Jake just said.
He says something like that at the end, doesn't he?
Yeah. He definitely says a lot of things like that when he's rambling in the preface and the epilogue.
Epilogue.
Yeah. Well, okay, so
Or is my invisibility exactly a matter of a biochemical accident to my epidermis?
Brandon, you cannot read it like that. We'll get
Can I
canceled.
not? How about Fat Alplane? Can you read it for us?
No, Fat Alplane can't come anywhere near these episodes.
Stay away, Fat Alplane.
How much
away.
did you have to drink before we started recording, Brandon?
No,
And can you
actually,
please show the contents of the table?
books.
Yeah.
All right.
That's my bowling ball. Bowling ball.
Oh, yep. And there's
Books and the cup of water.
3 empty fists of whiskey. And
Yep. Oh, that's
Uh,
actually the book is actually one of those hollow books, like in an old cartoon or something that has
Yeah.
a fifth inside of it.
No, I did all my drinking last night, and you guys were not there.
You know, I've got this baby.
Mm-hmm. Likely story.
It's called Church of the King. Jake has it too. And we're in Evansville, man.
It's going real well.
It is going well.
it's been going pretty well. Yeah.
Ben Solser was down, and he told us about it. And you guys will be down. Not to date this podcast, so people will know when we're recording it.
Marry it, why don't you?
Yeah. My brother's wedding is this
Couple days. Yeah.
He may
Yeah.
or may not be the Dark Hooded Lord of Death.
And he may or may not be marrying Maya.
But we'll see what becomes of them. We'll see if they both stay on.
My money is on, and no offense to the Dark Hooded Lord of Death or Maya if they're listening, but my money is on they both disappear. But maybe that's just me being cynical. Maybe they'll combine into one unit. Maybe they'll both stay on. I don't know. I don't know what they'll do.
Well, if they do both stay on, it's just because they forget to take it off.
Yeah, that's what we're kind of relying on. That's how you make like half of your money in Patreon. Well, guys, me and Theo, my daughter, I think I've mentioned her on this podcast before. She exists, if people don't know. We were just watching Ken Burns' Hemingway documentary.
She enjoying that?
She was screaming her head off, and I was just trying to make sure that she survived. And
You get PBS there?
My wife kind of works for them vaguely.
Oh, she still does?
Well, I don't know whether she still does or not, but we still have access to the app. So
you've been watching that. I've wanted to see it.
it is so much 100,000 billion% what you would expect a Ken Burns documentary on Hemingway to be. There's absolutely no surprises. He's got Jeff Daniels reading the part of Hemingway. He's got Meryl Streep reading one of the wives. It's just so Ken Burnsian, and yet like a warm blanket, like a nice cup of tea or whatever it is that people like. It is very nice to watch.
Whatever it is those kids drink.
Whatever that is that kids are drinking these days. It is nice to watch a Ken Burns documentary on Hemingway. And I did learn one or two things that Brandon had already taught me in his two contexts.
Man, impossible.
That's what did you learn?
Well, you just forgot.
Yeah, probably.
Paying attention.
Yeah. I am famous for not paying attention during Brandon's context.
Oh yeah. There's definitely no way you two both drift off often and frequently during my context.
No idea what you're talking about.
I would never. What I didn't realize about Hemingway, I knew about the wives, I knew about the World War I stuff, I knew about the Lost Generation. I think Brandon may have mentioned something about that modernism once or twice on the podcast.
Probably not. I don't like to talk about it much.
But the part that I was just watching that's pretty interesting is the stuff that he did in World War II. He was part of them marching into Paris. He actually fought a little bit. He grabbed a machine gun and was mowing down people as they went through the woods.
Wow.
And
no, I don't think I've talked much about that.
Yeah, no, the documentary does a pretty thorough job of
Sure they didn't make it up?
Well, the documentary is so at pains to dispel all the myths that he wasn't a starving artist in Paris. All this, every time Hemingway self-mythologized, Ken Burns wants to say, now, of course, we know it wasn't really blah, 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 blah. So that lends some credence to the fact that when they say Hemingway grabbed a machine gun and started blasting away, Hemingway actually grabbed a machine gun and started blasting away. I don't know. It's pretty interesting. If you Ken Burns type stuff, which I'm like, I enjoyed Civil War. I don't seek him out, but yeah, I like him well enough, I suppose.
I saw something I read.
If you like that kind of stuff,
okay, I'll finally get to the right sense. I heard something on NPR, a debate about whether or not PBS should be still producing these Ken Burns documentaries, or if they should be instead going more for women documentary makers and people of color documentary makers, and if they're not giving too much time to guys like Ken Burns. So,
well, here's the thing about Ken Burns documentaries: they make money.
Yeah,
people like to watch them. So I don't think Ken Burns is going anywhere. This one actually does have a woman co-author. It's Ken Burns and Lynn Novak, whoever she is, present Hemingway. So I don't know if people are interested in literature and in Hemingway and in modernism, and if they enjoy Brandon's context, I think you could do worse than spend 6 hours watching this.
6 hours.
Yeah, it's 3 episodes of an hour and 45 each, or change, whatever, something like that. So it's pretty interesting. It gave me the same appreciation for Hemingway that I already had, I guess. It didn't really give me a new appreciation for Hemingway. You know what it does do? Seeing a visual record, seeing all the photographs, you do understand what a sexually potent figure he was as a man. When you actually see the photographs of what he was like as a young man, you understand suddenly the myth of Hemingway a lot better than you do when you just think of him as an old guy with a scraggly beard on a boat, which is how kind of
he was like a man.
Yeah. Huh. You understand why people were so in love with the myth of Hemingway. That is one thing, I guess, that the documentary did for me. So, what's that sound?
Fall in love with Hemingway?
No, it didn't make me fall in love with Hemingway. They really emphasize his androgyny and the fact that his mother used to dress him in women's clothing and stuff like that. They really make a big thing out of that.
Clothing.
Yeah, exactly. Who hasn't been dressed in women's clothing? What's that sound?
It's Fat Alplane.
Hey, Fat Alplane! You're not supposed to show.
Yeah, he's not
yourself.
Here, actually. I told him to get out of here.
Yeah, no,
he's canceled.
Yeah, Fat Alplane is canceled. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you.
I still love you guys.
No. Fat Alplane, you're going to get us canceled. We're not interested in being canceled. Listen,
I'm going to go underground to become invisible, Fat Al Plane. I'll show you one day.
Wonder Woman's gonna ride you around.
I will not be appropriated. Whoa.
It's just some scene at the end of that book that might.
yeah, Fat Al Plane is going underground.
Well,
All right,
guys.
let's put the manhole cover on Fat Al Plane.
Maybe he'll find the mysterious phantom down there. Wouldn't that be a weird little mashup? There's a podcast idea.
There's a podcast. Hey, folks, if you go to patreon.com/the Bookening, maybe eventually.
Chip and Lance. You could have Fat Al Plane and the mysterious phantom.
Brandon,
boy.
that is one of the big questions. Probably the big question we'll answer in the next couple podcasts. But what I was trying to say, what actually flew over our heads was the baggage plane, which I guess is what it's now called. It's a plane and it has baggage in it, and it indicates the part of the show where we talk about our baggage. What baggage did you guys bring to the novel Invisible Man? Jake, I think we usually start with you.
I didn't know much about. I'd never read the book before. Never read anything by Ralph Ellison before that I'm aware of, at least. So I think the main baggage I brought was growing up a white boy on the Ohio River.
Well, what is it? I guess we might as well talk about it because it does make a difference. What does it mean to grow up as a white boy on the Ohio River?
So we are the front edge of the North. So Evansville has all kinds of like little underground railroad monument type things, but it's a place that people escape to for industry purposes, and a significant number of people stuck here as opposed to continuing to move up to Indy or Chicago or something like that. That was the natural pathway. So it means a little bit of that. I guess there's also just the old baggage that we've talked about in other places before of growing up in the 90s and being taught that we were taught to believe very much that we lived in a post-racial world. I very much bought into that growing up, and I had all kinds of black friends that I played with as a kid and around the neighborhoods and definitely in sports, and didn't occur to me that anything was weird until high school when things got weird. So I don't know.
Do you mark high school as things getting weird because that's when culture shifted, or because that's when the culture of your friend group shifted because of realities?
The culture of my friend group started to shift around middle school, but the pressure really got turned up in high school. So I saw in middle school, you'd sort of start to see race taking a little bit of precedence in friendships, so not a whole lot. And at least from my perspective, that was one way. It was suddenly some of my black friends are going to go hang out with a table full of black kids at lunchtime instead of with me,
right,
or whatever. And but especially in high school, what I saw, some people, I don't know, we just navigated it. We all navigated it as best we could, and I think the part that was most difficult for me to understand, and most challenging at the time, was I had a couple of friends that were black that were really, really smart, straight A students, just like really sharp kids. In high school, suddenly they start getting C's and D's, and I couldn't figure out why. And I had to, at some point, I can't really remember when or how I realized this, or maybe it was a conversation with somebody, I don't know. But I realized that they were tanking their grades because to succeed at school was to be white, or to try to be white, or try to play the white man's game.
Mm-hmm.
And so they stopped, and they played dumb. So that was just a thing that happened that I observed, and I've talked to a lot of different people about it, about that sort of thing. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know whether, I'm sure we probably talked about it on the Bookening before, but if not, we've certainly talked about it on other podcasts before.
Yeah, my friend Dwayne, who grew up in Virginia, experienced the same kinds of things. He maintained his grades, and he got isolated and marginalized. And he went on to get his PhD and stuff like that. He's doing pretty well for himself right now. But yeah, it's hard trying to navigate relationships and friendships and culture and cultural divides and what it all means for you and how it's all brought to bear on you when you're 14 or 15 years old.
Mm-hmm. Well, Brandon, same question.
Context or baggage for me.
Yes, including your entire history of you and race.
Yeah. Well, I was a homeschooled Baptist white boy, so really I didn't realize there was anything like race and that sort of, well, I take that back. My introduction to race and that sort of culture would have been because my grandparents lived in a neighborhood that at one point was very white, but then there was kind of a white flight when they were getting up older, and then a lot of Hispanics started to move into the area. And so there was the weird cultural shift taking place while they lived there that we saw. Then their neighborhood when my parents were growing up was one where they were very comfortable with the kids going out and playing. When we were young, they weren't as comfortable with us going out and playing. And so you just saw the whole weird shift taking place. And my baggage with this book is I was introduced to this book by one of the better professors I had as an undergraduate, Dr. Parrish. Shout out to Dr. Parrish, who had a wonderful class called it wasn't his class on the long novel. That's the one where we read Anna Karenina. So I took 2 classes with him. This was just, on a modern fiction, a modern American fiction. And so that's where he introduced me to 2 writers who are still fairly influential on me today, which is Ralph Ellison with The Invisible Man, and then also a writer called Dennis Johnson, who wrote Jesus' Son. So I'm thankful to Dr. Parrish for introducing me to these guys. And when I read this book, I was blown away. It was amazing. And part of it was Dr. Parrish. He had that rare gift of showing his enthusiasm for literature and getting students to feel it in his teaching. But yeah, I read this and I had never read outside of Frederick Douglass any works, I think, by a Black writer before that point. And it was eye-opening.
So you hadn't read James Baldwin or any of those?
I'd read a lot at that point. This was when I was in my undergraduate career at that point in my life, but I had stuck mainly to all the dead white guys and some of the dead white women too. But
right.
Yeah, it would be because of this that I would get into other writers. It would be thanks to him. I'd find Salman Rushdie, guys like that as well. So, yeah.
What's the connection to Salman Rushdie?
I think that it just kind of blew up my understanding of the Western canon and what should and shouldn't be read, and that there was a little bit more invitation to go out and read things that other people said were good, even if it wasn't in the safe dead white guy category.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
To find the best of stuff by.
And I found there was really good stuff out there. So, like I said, I was kind of classically trained, kind of not, but it was a weird hybrid thing that I had going on. But still, a lot of the same things that a lot of homeschooled kids are going to come out thinking, which is that there's a very strict, safe area of books that you got to stay in that safe area of books. And definitely anything from the Harlem Renaissance would have been, and yeah, Ellison's not technically Harlem Renaissance, he's after that, but anything from that would have been seen as risky. So even Flannery O'Connor was seen as risky, just to show you kind of the level of comfort these people had, because she was in the 60s, man. 60s, that's getting a little late there.
That is getting a little late there, man.
Yeah.
Well, my baggage is similar to everyone else's. I cannot emphasize how much I resonate with what Jake's saying, and we've talked about this in other places, as I said, but I just really assumed that we were living in a post-racial world growing up. I lived in a progressive town. I saw a lot of people of different races, and I watched PVF specials. I'm a child of Sesame Street. I am a child of Mr. Rogers. I am a child of these shows that are programmed to brainwash you into thinking that we're beyond that. That if you go on, if you're on Mrs. Frizzle's Magic School Bus, there's going to be a black kid and a Chinese kid and a nerd kid, and that sort of brainwashing works. It worked on me. I believed it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to pretend like there weren't blind spots in that. I'm sure there were all kinds of ways that I just didn't understand the plight of people of color. But it was this weird thing where, I hate to say this because it sounds like such a hack thing to say and you get made fun of for saying it, but my first friend was black. My first best friend was Lance, was his name, in 6th grade. And he was the class clown. And interestingly enough, he was quite what I think of as stereotypically old school black, or he wasn't. He was just like a goofy class clown type. And I thought he was hilarious and he would make little noises and stuff. But his dad was a black Baptist preacher with this high-pitched voice that would call people to the Lord, just very stereotypical. And his mom was this super strong, no nonsense, I wouldn't quite say sassy, but maybe kind of sassy black woman. And I would go to their house and I would just not really think anything of it. And then I would say it's really only been within the last few years that I've been thoroughly shaken out of thinking that way. And I'm still angry about it. I actually think, or I suspect, that we had something in the 90s, in my little world at least. Like, we'd been taught that there wasn't a difference, and we actually sort of believed it. And they took that away from us. You can't do that anymore. If I see a black person now, if I see a person of any other race, I am forced to think of them as other in a way that I did not. It's not that I didn't allow myself to think, it's that I just was programmed automatically to reject those kinds of thoughts. Mm-hmm. And now I can't do that anymore. And, we could spend several podcasts litigating whether that's a good or a bad thing. But if I'm just going to describe my own subjective experience, I'm still angry about that. I'm angry that they took away the dream from me, because now I feel like it's really complicated to navigate relationships with the people in the neighborhood that I live in Evansville, who are black. Like, I feel like I have to put a lot of thought into what I'm communicating when I communicate to them. And I didn't used to feel like that. I used to feel like we were just people that could communicate. And so I'm angry about it. And that's there's my baggage with race. My baggage with this novel is that I am the person that Brandon often likes to describe when he says classically educated Christians despise this stuff because they just feel like politics are being jammed down their throat, and so they actually step too far away from it. I just remember I went to Christian school, so mostly what we did was dead white guys. But then you'd be forced to read Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, and these kind of dippy, lame, conservative, socially progressive novels. And then you were aware of this whole corpus of things, White Teeth by Zadie Smith, or Beloved, or by Toni Morrison, or all these things that you just see at Barnes and Nobles that are like on the shelf for Black History Month or whatever. And you're just like, well, that must be garbage. There's no way that anybody likes that except for that they're supporting some kind of political ideal. That was just my assumption. And really what's happened is over the last couple of years, as Black Lives Matter has happened, as I'm sorry if this is lame, but as Black Panther hit the scene, as these different things have happened in the zeitgeist, I've tried to find my footing. And so I've read a lot of these texts, James Baldwin's Go Tell It on a Mountain, Zora Neale Hurston, Beloved. I just sort of a year or two ago said, I just want to read all of these just to see if there's something I'm missing, or if there's some, I just want to find the key. I want to find the way forward, because I don't understand where we're at as a society. And it's up for me, Nathan Aaron Alberson, to fix it all for us. So what's the key? How can I understand this? And so I read all these novels, and most of them turned out to be quite wonderful, but Invisible Man, far and away the best. I mean, just a work of genius, one of the great 20th century novels, maybe one of the great novels, period. I don't know. Maybe we'll decide it's not because it's got some content, but man, this guy can write. And man, does he capture something in this novel. So I won't pretend like I didn't grow up with this one, or I only read it for the first time within the last couple years. But even just revisiting it in preparation today, reading some sections, just like this guy, you really feel like you're getting your fix of great writing. You're injecting some pure writing heroin into your veins, and you just feel it.
You mean just as far as style?
Just in terms of style and in terms of what he has to say, you know?
Oh, you're right.
I don't know. I guess we should just talk about it. So let's just talk about it. But this is what I propose to do over the next 2 episodes. Let's talk about it first as a novel.
Mm-hmm.
I think this will be the right approach. And then we'll talk about it as a text, we'll try to decide whether we like what it's saying or whether we even know what it's saying. But first, let's just talk about it as art. So I don't know. What do you guys think of? I've already kind of tipped my hand here. Well, how do you guys feel about Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison?
You're right. As far as style and structure, this is pretty beautifully organized. It's got that quasi-epic quest, Bildungsroman, coming of age sort of thing going on with it. But he's playing around with all these different forms. And he even has the classical structure, and that you have everything come to a head right in the middle of the novel, like literally right in the middle of the novel, where he ends up in the hospital. You have all the white lights and the doctor around him, and that's kind of the turning point for him when he starts to see a change in his life. And so he's got all that balance and structure that's beneath the surface of the novel. Then he has all these really intriguing little sub-chapters, not sub-chapters, they're chapters that are happening within the novel that, like every good chapter does, tells a little story within the bigger story that still fits within the larger narrative. And so you have the wonderful, it's hard to call it wonderful, but you have the stuff that happens with Mr. Norton.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful in the sense that it's really well done. It's painful. You have the paint shop, the paint factory, with him going down into the boiler rooms and the belly of the beast, finding that it's actually a black man that keeps everything running. And then finally everything with Roz, or how do you say it? Raz or Roz?
I think Roz, the destroyer.
Roz, yeah. Or the exhorter at first and then the destroyer. Which, was I the only one thinking of the relationship between the two main characters from Midnight's Children with the Invisible Man and Raz?
Yes.
Okay.
I was thinking
Shiva trying to hunt down. Good.
Well, I was thinking of a lot of things like that. I was thinking about Kathy from East of Eden. I was thinking about every book that we've done that's been more overtly symbolic or archetypical.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking of Midnight's Children, is because in some ways the speaker, the narrator, is supposed to be a stand-in for all black men, right? The whole black race. And he's kind of has black history in his body and all that's happening. And for some, that reminded me of Midnight's Children. And then you had Shiva, who was always after the main character. So all that to say, and so it is working also. So it's working structurally really beautifully. Like you said, really wonderful style. At the beginning, he promises that this is going to be like jazz.
Mm-hmm.
And man, it reads like jazz. It's just it plays off of these ideas and themes, and he still is able to knit them throughout the novel and follow these chains throughout. He pays off on that promise. And you want a writer to do that. He's not staid and boring. He's not Victorian or anything like that. Occasionally, when he has Bledsoe speak, he'll be a little bit like that.
Right. A character might be Victorian.
But he himself, he's not afraid to write things that a white writer might be embarrassed to say. But it's because he's doing what he wants to do. And you can feel it. And it works for him. It's great when you see it happen like that. And so but then you also have the symbolism. So one thing I really appreciate is when someone wants to work in obvious symbolism in a way that's not overt and in your face.
Mm-hmm.
So it's obvious by the time you get to the end that Jack with his eye, anytime you see an eye or someone knitting, that they're a reference to the Fates.
Mm-hmm.
And there's even 3 of them, right? It's Tobbit and Jack and then the other guy. So there's 3 of them. Jack loses his eye. And so there you got a reference to them being the Fates behind the scenes, and you never really know what they're talking about in their committee meetings. But you really have to read into it to see that. And I appreciate that. He's not like saying, look here, here's a symbol, right? So
I think he's our most of all the books we've read. I would say, tell me if I'm wrong, if there's someone who does it better, but it seems to me that he's the most overtly symbolic writer that we've read, but also the most able to do it with some subtlety and some class. You have somebody like Ray Bradbury, to take a silly example, who's just like, I'm doing a symbol over here. Look at my symbol.
Yeah. What he's able to do with his symbols is he makes them an actual part of his natural world.
Right.
So they work symbolically, but they also just work as part of the story. And that's why sometimes you're just going along and you're reading, you're just like, whoa, that's a symbol. You're like, I didn't even realize that at first, right?
Yeah, I mean,
like even the little
and we
drops of
foreshadowed it. My first speech, I'm going to talk about how we all have only one eye.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's going to be about us taking control of our fate.
Right.
Yeah. So,
but actually, Jack's the one-eyed man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's so when you start to think about it, and this is the sign I think of a great work of literature. When you think about it, it seems obvious. There's so many cycles of death and rebirth. Whether it's him getting knocked out, whether it's him in the hospital, whether it's him going underground. There's so much stuff that's so overtly Freudian or Jungian or whatever you want to say, so symbolish, so symbolic. But
you put it on paper, it actually looks kind of hack, but
you
could read it and never know it without having some real knowledge of literature and symbolism behind you.
Yeah, you don't feel like, oh, another cycle of death and rebirth. Great. And yet he does that. I don't know how many times. There's probably a symbolic number behind how many times our hero is actually reborn as someone new in this novel. But yeah, can you guys? Am I right that he's the best that we've read in terms of that thing?
Oh, I think he is. Even so, the hospital scene. I'm pretty sure since it's in the middle of the book. That's supposed to be like the epic journey deep into hell, where then you're reborn, and that's always happens right in the middle of the epic quest. But like Jake said, you have to really pause and analyze and think about it, and then you're like, wow, that's really good. And I didn't come across at first. It doesn't hit you in the face. He's trying to say it's really important that you see this literary connection I'm making, right? Instead, he lets it do what a symbol needs to do in the first place, which is add to the meaning. It's like any good poem. You don't, until you stop and really analyze what the symbols and images are all doing, you can appreciate the technicality of it. But in the moment, you're just supposed to be caught up in the feelings and the meaning of what they're conveying at that time. And it's not really an analytical process. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would say in terms of heavy-handed symbolism, or symbolism that could be heavy-handed, the book that this really is the most like, besides Midnight's Children, is East of Eden. But East of Eden, as a counterpoint, is so... I love East of Eden. I probably like it better than this book in many ways, just because it's more wholesome. But East of Eden is so what I just accused Ray Bradbury of being. Just like, it's Kathy. She's the devil. Sometimes women are just the devil. Kathy's the devil. If anyone wanted to know what she stood for, she's Satan.
Little horns on her.
Yeah, exactly. It's just Steinbeck just can't help but tell you how cool he's being with his symbols and everything. And Ralph Ellison, the other guy that we've read that comes close to being able to do something like this is McCarthy, but he's just so brutal that
I think McCarthy does it. Yeah, but yeah, you're right.
Rushdie was an interesting pull because Rushdie is he's a very different kind of doing it without doing it. Right.
Oh yeah, he's a hyper.
He's doing it, but really doing it, but also not hack about it like Steinbeck or something. I don't know. I'm trying
he gets away with it.
I'm actually looking right now through our list of
just to see
things
who else
we've read. Yeah. Like Ishiguro,
I think actually,
like
I think
Homer.
Ray Brad.
How about Homer?
Yeah, Homer does it okay. I don't know.
I mean, what I thought as we've talked is I was actually thinking about the Coen brothers.
I had the same thought. Oh, brother, where art thou? Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
In terms of someone taking myth and transplanting it to reality and kind of doing it on the nose, but also just being clever enough that they get away with it and you don't feel like it's hack. The Coen brothers are actually a really good.
Joseph Conrad.
Conrad, I would put more in the camp of I'm doing symbols here. They're traveling back into primordial time. Colonel Kurtz was darkness incarnate, which I love. I'm not trying to make it sounds like I'm being a snob towards every other
I think
writer.
Apocalypse Now is more hack than Conrad, though. I think it's hard to, once you've lived with both of them and gotten some distance, it's hard to separate the two.
Yeah, it is. It is, and I'm typifying Apocalypse Now probably more than Heart of Darkness. Heart of Darkness, one of the most under remembered great books that we've read. One of the best books that we've read on the Bookening, and one of the ones that we think of and
we overlook all the time. Yeah,
we hype it the least. Well, Jake, you haven't chimed in too much. Do you agree basically on the greatness of what are your overall thoughts?
No, it's just a masterpiece of style and structure, and it's rare. I think the beauty of it is that it's really rare to get those two together. You can see somebody be a master of structure and storytelling like Steinbeck or even J.K. Rowling or something like that, but they're gonna really hit dead wood on style all over the place, right? And then you have masters of style who they're not going to propel you through a story, or they don't have something to say, or it's just not interesting because the structure is so wooden.
All my favorites: Millhauser, Chandler. Trying to think of some other examples.
Mostly just Chandler. Yeah, and then a good writer brings those two together credibly enough, and a truly great writer, masters them both really well. And really, even the greatest writers, seems like some of the greatest only really touch that for a moment.
Right.
They graze it, right? Harper Lee did it, and she did it once.
Right.
Tolstoy did it. Tolstoy's Tolstoy, right?
Tolstoy, yeah.
So Shakespeare, yeah.
Shakespeare say Austen's Austen. Austen's not nearly as interesting structurally.
No, sometimes she can drop the ball. If she's going to drop the ball anywhere, it's going to be on, I give up. Who cares about this? That's the structure of this novel, actually.
We just care about the characters.
Right.
Yeah. So, and that's the other thing. Like, there's just not, I can't find a point to pick on just in terms of craft.
Well,
it's almost as flawless a piece of craftsmanship as we've read. I feel very much about it the same way I did about To Kill a Mockingbird in that sense.
Yeah.
Were you going to pick on something?
Well, I was just going to say, yes, actually, but it's one of the greatest things that we've read. I'm going to pick on. And one of the things that I'm surprised we haven't thought is like such an obvious comparison that we have. I'm surprised we haven't even gotten there yet. Maybe it's just too obvious. Huckleberry Finn.
I've wanted to say it.
Yeah,
on Huckleberry Finn.
Well, Huckleberry Finn is actually maybe even what he was thinking when he wrote this novel, because Huckleberry Finn is a series of episodic, almost short story-like adventures. Each one of the adventures culminates in violence, just like this one does. It's like high comedy, violence, and satirical. It's a lot of the same sauce that goes into this one, but Huckleberry Finn falls apart at the end. And Mark Twain has no idea how to actually make something out of what he's conjured up.
No, I totally agree. I thought you were going to pick on Invisible Man. You're bringing Huckleberry Finn in as a way to show.
Yeah, no, I'm picking on Mark Twain wishes he could bring it home as well as.
No, you can tell that. So he spent 5 years on this novel, and you can tell. I mean, he labored over this. And
this is why stuff like that. This is why even the modern system's so broken. Why can't we give? We got to go back to patronage. Mm-hmm. And I know that people have been trying, right? But wouldn't you rather have To Kill a Mockingbird and Invisible Man and nothing else by either of those people than 7 Harry Potter books and 3 Fantastic Beasts movies?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I come back to Rowling because I actually think
she could have given us the one great.
She really could have. Novel. I really believe in her as a writer. I really do. And I know that sounds stupid, but I really think that she could have given us something. She could have. I think she had it. Maybe doesn't have it anymore. Who knows?
Hey, I'm the resident critic, and I will fully admit, when she wants to bring it, when she wants to just write a scene and really make it sing, she can do it.
She really can.
She just doesn't do it all the time. Which is
well, she's in a system where she's got to crank out these books and got to tell this story, and she's got to hit her deadlines because there's a whole machine and an apparatus, and there's money to be made. Mm-hmm.
It's the brotherhood of book publishing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's just too bad.
It is, but it is. You get the rare exceptions, and they didn't write much. Like Dennis Johnson didn't write all that.
He had a professorship, right? Like, and that's somebody's been able to do something like that. They've carved out their income somewhere else where it doesn't depend on their writing.
Mm-hmm.
They've found a way to make their writing,
superfluous to their income.
Yeah. So that they can focus on being creative.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they're going to make their business be creativity, then it's the business that they have to feed.
Well, if I can tie it into this stupid Hemingway documentary that I just watched, what becomes clear in the way that they structure the documentary and just in watching his life linearly, lingering on everything with zooming slowly into photographs, Ken Burns style, is just how much Hemingway always had to go away, experience a whole heck of a bunch of life, and then 5-10 years later, he'd crank out another masterpiece.
Yeah.
But
which, by the way, here's another thing that's been rattling around in my brain the entire time I've read this book and our whole discussion, and that's Mad Men. Because, I don't know, sorry, this is a really random pull, but that's just like that cycle and that embracing of our narrator. I mean, this is what there's certain writers, and I think Hemingway's one of them, where half of what he's trying to do is just be a cipher for the zeitgeist, right? Mm-hmm. I'm opening myself up. I am trying to figure out how to get the zeitgeist into me. And if I just go out and experience life, it's going to click. I'm going to find it. It's going to resonate. I'm going to be able to repackage it and repurpose it. And that's what our narrator does with the Black experience. And that's what Don Draper does to sell ads. Mm-hmm. But it's a really great story. And I think part of the reason that it's what Ralph Ellison did. Certain artists gravitate to that kind of story because that really is just what they are and what they try to do. And that's really all that they have.
Well, Ralph Ellison was a photographer as well. And so you can see that he would go out and who was it? Berlin Stories by Isherwood. Yeah. That was kind of the thing. People saw themselves as a camera's eye. And I think you're right. I think he was out there trying to be the jazz artist in novel form for the Black experience.
Well, because I'm sorry, I just watched this stupid Hemingway documentary, mostly because my daughter was crying and who am I kidding? I would have watched it anyway.
I would have watched it if I had access.
Well, so the thing is,
Burns bores me.
You're not wrong. And I knew exactly, we're going to get zoomed in photographs with celebrities reading and old letters.
Exactly. And he's just going to we're going to zoom in and we're going to move across the screen.
And we're going to use the same stupid classical pieces of music and some vintage jazz and stuff. It is so predictable. But Hemingway's an interesting guy, and the photos are interesting, and the story is interesting. And just hearing Jeff Daniels read Hemingway's prose is worth the price of admission because he's just got a fantastic voice for it. And he does the voice of Hemingway all throughout. So just hearing Jeff Daniels rasp, "It was a fine world and worth fighting for," is worth.
Aaron Sorkin's guy. So
yeah. Well, exactly. And you can see Aaron Sorkin's. He's out of his class.
Out of his class, is that what you said?
Yeah, like he's
when
got
you hear Jeff Daniels read Hemingway versus Sorkin dialogue.
Well, it just shows how much
Daniels actually brings to.
Daniels is really elevating that material quite a bit.
Oh yeah,
and particularly with the Sorkin projects that he's done, because the newsroom stinks. I know everybody likes the YouTube clip of him talking about what's wrong with America, but that's because that's what's wrong with America, is that we like that.
That's what's wrong with America.
Yeah, exactly. People are so the only smart people, us. So Ralph Ellison, they did have a quote from Ralph Ellison in the documentary, read by some Black celebrity as we zoomed over a photograph slowly. Ellison definitely keyed off of Hemingway, definitely loved Hemingway and stole as much as he could from him. And the thing that they emphasize a whole lot about Hemingway in this documentary is there's soldiers that fought with him, and the soldiers will talk about how everyone else was ducking for cover, but Hemingway was just standing there and his head was scanning. And you could just tell that click, 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 click. He's taking everything in. He's absorbing every piece of it, the smells, the sights, the sounds, so that he can use it later. And a lot of the people that loved Hemingway obviously got hurt by this or criticized him for this because he brutally absorbed everything about them and then turned them into a caricature in his novel or so on. But anyway, I think Ellison learned from that and is doing the same thing. This is such a richly observed novel. You can just tell he knows what every place smells like. He knows what those women's perfume is like. He knows
each person's very distinct. Mr. Norton is not the same.
It's very
Jack.
Much cannibalizing real people. There's no question of that. And yeah, I had the same thing. Actually, my comparison was what's his face? Mostly an essayist for the New Yorker.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. We talked about him not too long ago.
The humorist?
Amongst ourselves.
Yeah.
David Sedaris?
Yeah.
Sedaris, yeah.
David
Sedaris, yeah.
David Sedaris, yeah. Same kind of thing. I was imagining the same kind of thing. He goes through his entire life and every person he interacts with is just material.
Yeah, you'd never want to be friends with him.
You'd never want to be friends with that.
And you wouldn't be for long, actually, because once he cannibalizes you, then you're done.
Right. But yeah, I had the same. That is what this man did, and it's like he didn't write that the puppet jingle. He cribbed that from somebody from somewhere, and that character and all these other characters they're real people.
Everybody's taken from someone.
Well,
everybody's taken from somebody.
That's why I actually felt real pain and embarrassment during the Dr. Bledsoe scene in particular, which is when I just realized I trust this guy. This is a great novel. Because that is so closely and finely observed. I just felt like I was seeing something that only Black people had seen. Like the bitterness that this guy expresses towards white culture and his own selfishness, his own greed, his own way of viewing his place in the system, the way that he despises and yet capitalizes on the legacy of Booker T. Washington and all these figures. It's just so precise. And you just know Ellison had heard somebody give that speech. He just had to have.
Or made it at some point, but
or made
probably
it himself.
had heard it.
Yeah. But either way, like there's nothing that's made up or exaggerated.
That's right.
Which is fascinating to me because he then deals in these big, broad symbols, these big, broad archetypes. And I think that's why I love this novel so much at the end of the day. I love something that can be as splashy, as mythic, as big, and yet as detailed and finely observed as this. I think a lot of my favorite books that we've read, whether it's East of Eden or Something Wicked This Way Comes or whatever, are books that do this kind of thing, but this one does it
even
some of the best.
Yeah.
But even Tolstoy, I would say he's more on the realism side of things.
No, he is,
like
yeah.
Pierre doesn't stand for anybody else. Pierre isn't every young man. Pierre is just Pierre, and he's so Pierre that he's more real than any other character.
That's why he went to Anna Karenina instead of War and Peace.
Yes, War and Peace is definitely
because Anna Karenina does stand for somebody, and Levin does stand for more than just Levin,
right?
While still being uniquely Levin, and Kitty stands for something a little bit more than Kitty, and the racehorse definitely stands for more than a racehorse.
The racehorse is the closest we get with Tolstoy, and
to the kind of thing that Ellison does all the time.
Yeah, but I was going to say even Tolstoy, I don't think gets at the level of being able to work symbolically that Ellison does. There's something about Ellison's project that just lends itself to that sort of work, and I think it does have to do with it's kind of this myth making. Go ahead.
Some of it, I think, is just being post-Jungian.
Yeah, I think he's able to draw.
He had
consciously
way more tools.
Yeah,
way more tools to understand.
And he's writing in the 50s, which means Freud, Jung, like just all these ways of thinking about ourselves in relation to myth was out there and becoming very popular at that time.
It's like an undergrad being able to sit down and write a critique of Plato.
Right.
Well, the only way you could possibly hope to do that, this colossal genius that stands over Western civilization, is that so many people downstream of you have dealt with Plato and dealt
Yeah.
with Plato and dealt with Plato and dealt with Plato and built categories for understanding what's good and what's bad in Plato and synthesized it for you so they can spoon feed you. And you can actually, as a sophomore in college who is nowhere near the genius of Plato, actually sit down and write an essay that has some accurate criticisms of Plato. Well, it's the same kind of thing, I think.
Yeah. Well, in that sense, this novel is very postmodern, whether it quite fits all the attributes of the official postmodern school.
How so?
What's that?
What do you mean? Sorry.
Oh, just the fact that it's able to be so self-referential and so drawing on Western canon and elements of other things.
Well, and the other way it does it is so with some students right now, we're reading Remains of the Day and helping them understand that the structure and the format and the storytelling perspective matters for a book. And so that a big part of the meaning from Remains of the Day comes from the fact that it's Stevens who has chosen to tell this story. And Ishiguro is getting a lot out of the fact that it's Stevens writing this and thinking through that very carefully. Here again, you can't get away from the fact that it's a narrator and he's telling you the story as first person, right? And so a lot of that postmodernism is also coming. So a lot of postmodernists use that first person perspective because it gives them a lot to do. As far as one, he's kind of processing his entire past here. And so he can think of it mythologically and symbolically.
Right.
And
we don't actually have to settle the question of whether Raz, the destroyer, was this larger than life mythic figure. We know that for the narrator he was, and
that's enough.
That's enough.
Yeah.
And if he's on a piece of paper, he's going to get burned as we go back through all of the symbolic things in our lives.
Yeah. Oh, man. Speaking of things that get burned, I hope that none of our patrons have ever felt burned by the content that they get behind the paywall. I know they haven't.
Probably not.
Guys, this is a great discussion. I want to continue it, but we're going to have to do it next week. Let's call out our patrons real quick. Why don't you guys say the names of fruit for these patrons?
Okay.
I'm sorry, folks, to cut us off it's just having a lot of fun in this conversation, but
the White Father cutting us off.
That's right. Well, folks, there's only so much.
The Great White Father. Isn't that what it is? You're the Great White Father. I am determined to get us canceled.
Yeah, why don't you guys say your favorite white thing? Don't say your favorite white thing.
Are you serious?
No. Say your favorite fruit.
Okay. I was going to say you guys.
Am I your favorite white thing, Brandon?
No, you're his favorite fruit.
Oh.
Well played.
0 bar. Ooh, a definitive ranking of fruit.
I'm glad it's definitive. One would want some hacks. Amateur.
Use this, and we're starting at number 27.
All right, let's see how many.
27?
How many patrons do we have?
I have never counted. That's a really interesting question, actually.
Well, we can.
Well, I know we have 60 something total, but in terms of the people that we call out, well, Robert and Rhonda the Lovebirds, Brandon.
Cranberries.
The Artful Anthony Dodger, Jake.
Frankenstein.
Little Anthony's Cigar Store, Brandon.
Papaya.
I think you made the right choice. I saw you thinking about it, and I support the choice that you made, Brandon.
I'm committed to this list.
The Immortal Chelsea E.
Sunk cost fallacy, Brandon. Frankenstein.
Jimmy Beam and Little Annie Oakley.
Dracula.
No!
Dracula. Because I'm not saying this one. The next fruit was watermelon.
Okay. Well, you guys are
the best.
The true Great White Father. You guys are the truth. Jimmy Beam and Little Annie Oakley.
Frankenstein.
Lily of the Valley.
Dracula.
Andrew Nestor the Lovebirds.
Frankenstein.
The Keith Master.
Dracula.
David's Mighty Men Trucking.
Frankenstein.
John and Jill, Little Baby Max.
Dracula.
Jay and Katie, who are Cold and Love Cheese, and also Sales Lists, including your eye faces.
Clementines are number 4.
What?
What's number 1?
What kind of jank fruit list is that?
What kind of jank fruit list is this?
Take a guess what number 1 is, and this is really janky. Go ahead.
Apples?
You're not going to guess. No.
Banana.
The banana's 2.
No, banana.
Apples is 5. Apples is 5. Can you believe apples is 5?
Boo.
Plums is 6.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, so where's pineapple?
Number 1.
Okay.
Oh, come on. That is the jankiest of jank fruit lists.
Pineapple's pretty great.
Yeah,
Pineapple's good, but number one?
it's not number
Well, I don't know. What would you rank ahead of it?
The apple. It brought original
Oh
sin
my
into the world.
What?
Come on.
In
pineapple
drawings,
can't-
anyway.
Cherries is number 3.
Oh, boo.
Fun
All right,
fact.
Strawberry is number 7. Mango is number 8. Go ahead,
I think
Jake.
the
Sorry.
Greek word for, or maybe it's Latin. Anyhow, pun.
Mhm.
It's a pun. Apple being associated with the fall is a pun, an original language pun,
This is like gravity.
either Latin or Greek.
Like
I can't remember
It
which.
sounds like the words the fall.
The word for sin
nice. There you go.
or evil
Sounds
or
like
something.
apple.
It's been a minute since I knew that fact, and so I'm having trouble pulling it.
Well, I'm just going to while you look it up, I'm going to give my list. Grapes, apples.
Grapes is number 10.
It's Latin.
That's pathetic.
The Latin word for evil and apple are the same. Malice.
There you go.
M-A-L-E.
And that's not because of Genesis. Well,
No.
not even in
No,
Genesis.
so Jerome made the pun, and everybody has latched onto it since.
So she could have eaten a pineapple for all we know.
It's just fruit. That's all we
Maybe it
knew.
was just
It's
some
probably a kiwi.
And until Jerome, the paintings were weird. And after Jerome, it's
they
apples.
all had apples. The correct fruit list would begin with grapes. It would proceed to apples. It would then include
What kind of grapes?
That's a good question.
seedless, like purple ones.
Concord grapes, maybe. But I'm sorry, anything that doesn't have blueberries, raspberries, pineapple.
Oh yeah, no. Blueberries is a good like in season blueberry would be number 1. Out of season blueberries like number 3, and then raspberries, strawberries, anything berry related.
Any berry.
Have you had good pineapple before? Like actually ripe,
Yes.
fresh pineapple?
I don't care. I don't care.
Watermelon.
No, watermelon's like doesn't even belong on the list. Watermelon is gross.
Is that even a fruit?
We are a literature podcast.
We are a literature podcast.
Fruit.
Don't call Jake a fruit, Brandon. That's not fair.
Coconut's on the list.
You know, Nathan, I've already made that joke.
I know.
Pretty low hanging fruit.
Papaya, honeydew, and cantaloupe are both on here. What a list.
What a list.
What a list.
What a list. Speaking of lists, let me finish reading this list.
Do
We've
it fast.
got Fair
Jazz
Princess of
style.
Wonder, Happiness, Mother, Best, Console, Prime, Adam, Jeremy, Lavender's green, Dylan, I love you too.
Frankenstein.
Dracula.
No constrictor, Merit Chief, the Fair and Life, Liberty, etc. Jason Jeffrey, Rachel, Min and Angela, Jebediah, Jay Bracken Ruin, Timothy the Writer, Don, Eric, and Kate the Camp Champ Kings, Road Warm and Love Beats, Matty, Sweet Jimmy Sunshine, Darkness and Laura, the Keeper of Eternal Light, Cold Seal Cody, Jacqueline the Librarian, Barbarian, John, Papa Bomb, Diggity, Captain Deals, Mate, Saxophone Alex, the other Saxophone Alex,
Frankenstein.
Dracula.
Brian, the Terror of Texas, and Eric, and Crimson, who are stuck in the cold. Please send cheese.
Frankenstein.
Red Soul and Kylo Ren, John, the Cosmic King of Chaos,
Dracula.
Matthew, the Mind Flayer,
Dracula.
and Harry, okay, get your gun. Flight of the Valerie,
Dracula.
Thor Ragnajosh,
Dracula.
Steven, ...
Frankenstein.
What were we thinking with that one? Dracula.
How proud we
SOS.
were of Nathan for coming up with it. Peglodon.
What?
Guys, have we done so many episodes you don't even remember? Peglodon, our patron, Peglodon.
Okay.
Dracula.
Frankenstein.
You know what, Jake? You might not have been here for Peglodon, actually. Come to
Was
think
I
of it.
here for Peglodon?
I must not have been. Yeah.
Brandon, you were here and your body was sitting there. It may have been drooling.
I mean,
Folks.
that's pretty common.
Hey, did we make it through this podcast without getting canceled?
Time will tell.
I don't know.
Okay. All right, folks. We'll see you next time.